So I started doing these cooking videos just as a bit of fun. And I wasn't really serious about it. But someone asked if I might share some of my recipes with them because they'd never learned to cook when they were young. So today I'm going to make a really quick lentil curry. The quickest curry you can make, homemade curry that is. So I've got a bag of lentils. It'd be nice if they were organic, but this is all I could find. I'm going to take a cup of that, a cup of red lentils, and then we're going to put it in the pot. The thing about lentils is you've got to really wash them well. That's the most important thing. So we're going to wash these, rinse them in the sink. They say if you don't wash your lentils, then it's going to make you fart a lot, so it's probably a good idea. You can see there's a lot of frothy liquid in there. You can just get rid of it. It does take quite a lot of water to clean lentils and pulses in general. But it's well worth it. You can do this with a sieve if you have one. But I just like doing it in the pot and pouring off the water. So keep rinsing until the water runs clean. I think that should be about right. Now for this curry, you don't have to add any vegetables to it, but I've got a few veg here and I'm going to use them. A bit of garlic to go in there. In the monastery, we don't get garlic and onions. But in general, the monks, then they will eat whatever there is offered when they're outside of the monastery. Of course, with Nepali food, then they put lots of garlic and onions in them. So when the monks go out, they definitely get garlic and onions. If you can just crush the garlic in the skins, and it's easier to peel it. So I'm going to use 4 cloves. Now this is a super fast curry, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put the garlic straight in the pot. Got a few leftover bits of carrot, I may as well use them. Like I say, you can do this without any veg in it, but I'm just using the leftovers. Also, you can use potato as well, cauliflower. So you cube these carrots, or dice them, and then put them straight into the pot so that they cook with the lentils. Really, I'm just using whatever vegetables were left over in the fridge when I left my parents' place. So it's real bachelor food. If you're a meditator, then the nice thing about lentils is you can cook a big pot and then that will last you for several days. And it keeps for a very long time as well, especially if you put it in the fridge. And some leftover tomato, may as well use that. Just going to cut it roughly, put it in the pot with the lentils because it'll all cook down into a sauce on its own. You don't need to be fancy when you're doing simple home cooking. That's a bit different for the mushrooms and the onions. If you want to add mushrooms and onions, really you should fry them a little bit. I'm just going to use all of these mushrooms. May as well. Okay, it sounds like the water's boiled. Boiling the water in the kettle makes it all a lot quicker. And what you want to do is you just want to cover the lentils with boiling water. And that's got some tomatoes, carrots, got a bit of garlic in there. And I'm going to add garam masala. So I've got this garam masala. You can do all kinds of mixes of spices, but this is what I'm going to use. I'm going to use quite a bit. Also, what's quite nice is cumin and coriander and turmeric. I'm just going for a ready-made mix now. I'm going to put that on high and get it boiling really quickly. I have a turmeric in there. And a bit of chili. a bit of spice, a couple of tablespoons of olive oil, but you can use ghee if you like. I can't really eat ghee, can't eat butter. Bit of black pepper to taste, and salt. So all we want to do now is we want that to come to a boil. We'll come to a boil and then we'll put it on medium-low heat and cook it for not very long. The lentils cook really quickly, in about 10 minutes. For lentils, like these red lentils, you can actually boil the water and then turn the heat off and cover it, and they'll be ready in about 40 minutes. All right, now I'm gonna simmer it for about 15 minutes once it comes to a boil. And while we're waiting, I'm gonna cut some onions and mushrooms. And I'm gonna add them into the curry. Okay, because we boiled the water in a kettle, then this mix of lentils and vegetables comes to the boil very quickly. Let's find the lid for that. That's my lid. Okay. And earlier I made some brown rice. So in general, with brown rice, you want to use 2.5 times the water to rice. So this was 1 cup of rice, 2.5 cups of water, and I added some turmeric, brought it to a boil, and put it on a medium-low simmer for about 40 to 45 minutes. Okay, so now this is boiling. So now the lentils are boiling. Okay. You can also add raisins or sultanas into that. Some fruit is quite nice. So now what we need to do is just cook off the onions and mushrooms a little bit. And to do that, we're going to need a frying pan. And we'll put the frying pan on medium heat. Not too hot, you don't want to burn the onions. And I'm going to add a bit of olive oil in there. Maybe just half a tablespoon. In general, you need quite a bit of oil in your curry. It gives it better flavor. It gives it a glossy texture. I need to just turn that up a bit. It's not quite boiling enough. Now when you're frying your onions, how you test it is you take a little bit of onion and you put it in the pan. And when it starts to sizzle, then you know the oil is ready to fry. So that's not quite ready yet. I think often we're under the illusion that if we buy takeaway or ready-made dinners, then overall we save time. But one thing is that the expense is a lot more, and also it's much less healthy for you because processed food has a lot of nasty stuff in it, especially lots of salt. And really you can produce quite nice, good quality food by yourself without having to go through a lot of fuss. And if you know a few recipes, then you can also cook things very quickly. It's part of the problem these days. We feel like we are time deprived. There's just never enough time to do the things we want to. But really, I think it's got a lot to do with the way we live our lives in the 20th century. So now you can see that the onion is sizzling in the oil. That means we're ready to add the onions. We'll put the onions in first, soften them a bit before we add the mushrooms. You want the onions to be a little bit transparent, and don't have the heat too high, otherwise they'll burn. If you slow cook the onions, then they will caramelize and they'll have more flavor. And I'm not going to slow cook the onions. I've got to pack up and catch the ferry. Also, when you're making a curry, it's nice to add the curry spices directly into the onions. Gives them much more flavor. Normally I would add cumin and coriander powder into the onions, but I just brought this ready mixed garam masala today. Frying the spice really brings it to life, and immediately you can smell the aroma. I think we tend to fall under the illusion of false economy. We think if we have all the right stuff, then we will make our lives easier. And what happens is most people's houses just fill up with all kinds of junk. I mean, there's all kinds of cooking aids, machines for processing food. And what happens is you just end up having to work twice as much to pay for all the stuff that you own. I think this is a problem in general in the West. People just have too much stuff. And we're kind of coerced into it because on the TV, then everybody's trying to sell you some kind of new gadget. And sure, that gadget may help you to do a particular job, let's say a spice grinder, more efficiently. You have to ask yourself how many times you're going to use it. And if you have 100 different gadgets for 100 different jobs, are you realistically going to be able to use all of that, let's say in the course of a year? And this is part of the reason why I like to do a lot of the carpentry here with the chainsaw, because it's kind of one tool that can do loads of things. And it doesn't do a really refined job, but it's very quick, very easy if you know how to use it. I think in the West, then we tend to fuss over things too much. There's a joke my Lama always makes. He says, when you sit down in a Western restaurant, then you get about 10 different types of knives and forks. And then he never knows which one he's supposed to use. Also, you've got different plates for every different thing on the table. And he says it's a lot easier if you just have one plate. And so his point is that it's just a lot easier if you simplify things. For example, in the monastery, then most people will just eat out of a bowl. They'll have a bowl and a spoon, maybe a cup, and that's about it. And then you eat your meal, you clean your own bowl, and you're finished. Life's a lot easier. We've got a different plate for every different type of food. And we've got cups and glasses and wine glasses, cognac glasses. And then we've got to buy a dishwasher in order to clean all the stuff we have. Wouldn't life be simpler if you just had one pan, one bowl, one cup? You would spend a lot less money as well, and also have to work less. It's important to simplify life. But this isn't a message that Amazon and Walmart are going to want you to hear, because capitalist markets depend on people purchasing more and more stuff. We rely on growth markets. And it's like we're caught in a trap and we can't get out. Our economies are like a giant snowball rolling down a mountainside. It's all got out of hand. And in general, then we want our markets to do well. And so if everybody slowed down and started cooking things for themselves, buying less things, then it would be a disaster for the economy. But in the end, this is better for us. It's better for us and it's better for our world. Because as you know, then our resources are limited. I mean, there's crazy people out there. And they try to tell you that it doesn't matter, that once our resources have run out, then we can just go find some other ones on Mars or another planet. It's like we're not satisfied with gobbling up the planet that we're living on. We've got to find other planets and destroy them as well. And I think also that this incessant need for growth in markets is what's inspiring some people to develop this ideology where they feel that women basically have to be forced to give birth, to have babies, because they're panicking, because the global population is going down. It's funny, when I was young, then we were worried about overpopulation. But as we can see in places like America and Japan and most of the rest of the world, then the danger is that our populations will reduce. But a reduction in the global population is about the best thing that could ever happen to the planet Earth. And the only reason why we're desperate to have more people, well, that's because big business and the oligarchs depend on more people buying more stuff every year to keep themselves in business. So really, this idea that we have to force women to give birth and increase our population is predicated on the notion that our current system of economics is the right one, that it's the right path for the planet. But I think it's foolish to believe that. The masters of the past didn't concern themselves with the busyness of city life. They ran off into the wilderness and lived like wild animals. I've often thought that there's nothing better for the planet than being a meditation practitioner, because meditation practitioners don't buy lots of stuff and they hardly ever travel in a car. When I was in retreat, and for 4 years, I never traveled in a car or flew in an airplane. Not only that, when you're sitting meditating all day, then you burn very few calories. I found that I could live on 1 handful of tsampa every day. That's roasted barley flour. That was enough to keep you going. Okay, we're going to add this into the lentils now. I've got our fried onions and mushrooms. I'm just going to add them in there. Like I say, you can just make this lentil curry without anything in it. Put some garlic straight into the lentils and cook it with some spice and a bit of oil and it'll be fine. And it makes quite a nice curry. And it's homemade. It's much more healthy than the stuff you buy in packets, unless you spend a lot of money and get organic. The Buddha taught that our suffering comes from our craving and desire, so this need to have more. But really, the way we live our lives these days is exactly the opposite. It's all about getting more things and buying more things. It's about triggering people's desire. So corporations have to develop new, shiny, fancy things that they can sell you. They have to develop new technologies to keep you interested. But what was taught by the Buddha is exactly the opposite of this. We need to have less things. We need to be easily satisfied and have few desires. And this is part of the reason why we meditate, in order to tame the mind, to stop our craving and grasping. What the Buddha taught was that this craving and grasping is what leads to us experiencing suffering in the mundane world. And because of that, we have to overcome it. But as they say, then the world and the path are completely different. Famously, it was said that worldly people think Milarepa is crazy. Milarepa thinks worldly people are crazy. And he thinks they're crazy because they spend all their time looking for happiness, but instead of applying themselves to the causes of happiness, what they do is they apply themselves to the causes of suffering. And to put it simply, the causes of our suffering is our craving, our clinging, and our attachment. Well, although this is a very simple curry, then I have to say it smells quite good. And I do crave it. But it's a more simple pleasure. You have to start somewhere. If you can reduce the complexity of your life, live more simply, and still have attachment to the simple things, the beauty of nature, a little bit of time, sitting alone in silence, enjoying the sounds of the birds in the air. And then, little by little, we can seek liberation, and liberation from samsara. But it's a long path, and it's not one that we're able to accomplish immediately. The first thing is to develop mindfulness, to become aware of your negative emotions, like greed and anger, jealousy and pride. And then remember to apply the remedies. The remedies like loving kindness, generosity, humility. And then slowly, little by little, we can progress on the path to final enlightenment. Okay, lunch is nearly ready. I think I can just cover that and let it simmer for another 10 minutes. And then I'll see you later. Bye. Well, there you go. A bit of lentil curry. Put some sliced avocado on top. And as usual, some homemade kombucha. This is peach kombucha. Really, you want to have a bit of naan bread or some chapati. Maybe some pompadum. Some Indian bread to go with that. But I don't have any. I've got a few tortilla chips here that'll do. So I'm going to have my lunch. And so, see you next time. Let's see what this tastes like. Very basic, very simple, but tasty. The avocado is a nice touch. Is your mouth watering? The amazing thing is, we can have really simple stuff and enjoy it. It can be really tasty. But these days, it's almost as if, unless we've got a really fancy spread with all different types of food, we're never happy. Just goes to show what you can do with a few vegetables you found at the back of the fridge and a bag of lentils that's been sitting in the cupboard for several years. Okay.